Hello everyone, and welcome to this video, which is in our engine opening series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and we are taking a look. It's the third and final video on the Queen's Gambit accepted with d takes c5, and we'll be looking at it from the black perspective. So to that end, I have flipped the board. There we are. So first of all, let's quick refresh. How do we reach this line? d4, d5, c4, d takes c4. Knight f3, knight f6, e3, e6, bishop c4, c5, castles a6, and now d takes c5 from white. So yeah, as I said, I was a Queen's Gambit accepted player in my professional time, probably the foremost Queen's Gambit accepted player, I think, for a while. Came up with a lot of interesting ideas. Obviously, this was something I played the Queen's Gambit accepted for a win. I played it against strong players, weaker players, and I wanted to win every game. So this was really the only line that was kind of a problem. I did spend quite a lot of time looking at alternatives here to not exchange off the queens. That was really something that I tried, but I never really managed to find something that worked. For example, if you go knight bd7, just aiming to take on c5 afterwards, then b4, a5 is met by queen a4, pinning the pawn on a5 to the rook on a8. So you never manage to get in a takes b4. And well, the engines confirm that this is not very good at all for black. Queen c7, actually played by Petrosian of all people against Palbenko in 1959, is also not very good. You just go b4, b6. Actually, the engines have plenty of ways of playing, but this is the way they want to do it, just in a sort of a gambit way. If you take on b4, they'll go rook c1, and yeah, this is just ending up to be very, very strong for black. I think the best thing I ever found was queen a5. That's at least you know that you're going to get your pawn back, but yeah, it is quite tough. Actually, Stockfish suggests something that I'd never spotted in my time when I was looking at it. I was more worried, to be honest, with what Dragon plays, which is queen e2, queen takes c5, and then e4, and White's just going to play e5, and well, this queen on c5 is going to be misplaced, so that didn't look too good. Yeah, knight bd2, queen takes c5, b4. Was quite a nice gambit from Stockfish. Actually, just looking for knight c4 and then bishop a3, and this queen's in real problems. So yeah, b5, a4, with still with a threat of bishop a3 here, and already it's looking quite tricky for black. So yeah, these sort of ideas to avoid the exchange of queens, not great. Bishop takes c5, I think is what I mostly played. I think that was what I was still aiming to do when I retired as a professional. The idea really was that after queen takes d8, king takes d8, it's what I explained in the previous video. At least you feel that having the king in the centre, that's giving you some sort of counterbalance to white's extra tempi, which are based on him being white, and also on black having played this half useful move, rather than a full development move like castles. You feel at least with the king on e7, you've got something back for it. So what are people playing nowadays? Bishop e2, you go king e7, and then there's a few different possibilities here. Actually, there's knight bd2, and there's also knight c3 as well. Let's have a little look at knight c3 first. In general, this is not normally a good move for white in the Queen's Gambit accepted. Not when black can play b5. Why is that? The point is, after a4, you go b4 and you hit that knight on c3. White would rather meet b5 with a4 when the knight's still on b1, because after b4 you get the knight into c4 straight away rather than having to retreat. But this is a slightly different position really, because the idea is that after you play b5, White's aim is to go knight d2 in this position. Now we're threatening bishop f3, which would be slightly irritating. But black goes knight bd7. If bishop f3 now, you can just go rook b8 and bishop b7. That's not so bad. But now you go knight b3. And, well, black's best move in this position is to play the move just bishop b7. We're just going to give up this dark squared bishop and just claim that the activity that black has got is sufficient for that. Now, there's plenty of lines in this position, and actually we're still following theory. These are all my engine games, but well, human theory has already trodden these paths, presumably assisted by engines. b4 knight e4 takes, or rather bishop b2, rook hd8. We're looking at the game Mamedyarov against Vachilagrov from St. Louis 2022 here. Knight takes e4, knight takes e4. And well, this is kind of the key point. I mean, black is threatening to go f6 and e5 when, yeah, the two bishops are not really that important. And when you take on g7, black plays f6, and well, yeah, white has got an extra pawn, but well, you know, all these squares are sort of open to white's pieces. We've also got rook g8s as well, which are coming in. This bishop is out of play. Yeah, of course, you know, white can save himself. Rook c8, bishop f3. Was played in Mamedyarov Vachilagrov, and now Vachilagrov played king f7 first, but rook c4 is what the engines want, and after bishop h6 they play rook d2, and well, you can imagine this is just going to end up a draw. Bishop e4, bishop takes e4, f3, bishop d3, and a draw was soon agreed afterwards in Stockfish against Lila 0. So yeah, you know, this gives white a nominal pawn advantage, but not that much. And yeah, quite unusual plan for black, you know, to be able to give up the dark squared bishop. But it's simply that, yeah, you know, white's spending quite a lot of time, of course, with knight d2 to b3, takes c5, and black's just got enough time to do it, as long as black realises that he can offer a pawn. Probably the main line, actually, is knight a5, played by Anish Giri. Rook b8, bishop d2, and again, these are all my engine games, but also mainline theory, actually following a game Anish Giri against Nihal, that's right. So rook c1, rook c8, and now a4. And after b takes a4, play the move bishop c3. And you're just getting ready to play rook takes a4, also hitting the bishop on g7 as well. You're also attacking a6 as well. Yeah, I mean, now you can do a number of things. Actually, what Nihal played was the move a3, which is also Lila's choice. And yeah, bishop d6, rook takes a4, bishop d5. This was Stockfish's choice. Let's just have a look at this game, Giri against Nihal, because it was played in Blitz, and funnily enough, Nihal actually won this game with black. But yeah, probably nothing too much to do with the game, more to do with the fact that it was Blitz. But actually, this whole game followed. This is a game of mine, Ethereal against Lila, and this is also Giri against Nihal. And here, Anish played king f1, and f5 was played. Well, Ethereal played rook c2, bishop d6, takes, bishop a6, rook c7, essentially, yeah, you know, Lila felt that it was able to deal with this extra pawn. Very difficult to assess, to be honest, for human players. Why isn't this a pawn dangerous? But the big problem is that this knight on a5 is out of play, and as soon as you try and get it into play, then the a4 pawn can be targeted. So yeah, Lila managed to make a draw out of this. I'm going to be putting all this PGN file on the usual place so that you can see it. So don't worry about writing down the lines. It's just you'll all have it available. But this is the move, knight c3, b5. That seems to be the best there. Just a couple of things that interested me, actually. I mean, knight bd7 I wondered about. I mean, you know, I was thinking, you know, knight c3, the idea is maybe to go knight a4, so, you know, let's cover this b6 square and keep b5 in reserve. Why not? But actually, yeah, Ethereal surprised me with this move e4. Against Lila. Lila also played it, and actually seems to be quite strong. So after knight g4, we go bishop f4, f6, rook c1, and already you can see that black's, you know, a little bit awkward here. Pressure against the bishop on c5. Yeah, if you establish yourself on e5, you're going to get some weaknesses. So bishop a7, bishop c7, nice move, just getting ahead of this knight, and then rook d1, knight f3 takes. Knight e5, bishop d6 check, king f7 check, and then bishop e2, you know, and again, you know, we're getting ready for knight a4s, maybe king f1, f4, that sort of thing. Black's uncomfortable, you know, it's not particularly comfortable at all for black, so that's quite a surprise there. Yeah, I don't know, I mean, in a move like knight c6, we can just play knight a4 here. And if you go bishop a7, I'll probably go b3 and then get this annoying little check in. And if you go to d6, then I can go knight b6. Rook to b8, rook to d1. Again, annoying knight on b6. So it's not so bad for black. So knight c3, yeah, b5 recommendable really, and that just seems to be relatively equal. So knight bd2 is really the key move there, and basically white's super flexible, as you can imagine. If you've seen the previous video, you could be going to b3, you could be going to c4, you could be combining it with knight e5 to d3 or knight e1 to d3. If things turn out fine, you might even just go b3 bishop b2. You've got all the possibilities there really. What should black play in this position? So, well, the move that I had prepared as a professional was b6 in actual fact, and well, actually this was I got interested in this, and this was why my very first video where I showed you that endgame, that actually arose from something very similar there, which was following this game Tan against Mamadjarova, I think, in 2022, where white played like this. Played bishop d2, knight c6, and then rook d8, and then rook fc1, now knight c6 and a4. And rook c8 was what happened in that Tan game, and well, after a5. Take a look at the first video if you don't think that's dangerous. I think I went rook a b8 in my game against Leela at one node, and but again, a5, b5, knight b6 was what my engines wanted, and again, white's just more comfortable. I mean, knight c5 things are coming in, bishop f3 things. If that knight on c6 moves away, we'll have bishop b4 check. Not nice for black. So yeah, what I felt was the most natural choice for me really doesn't really stand the test of time, I think. The funny thing is that this move that the engines are now choosing as their main line for black was played by Vishy Anand in 1993, and I remember analysing this move. And I couldn't really see anything wrong with it, but I just thought it's a bit weird, isn't it, really? I mean, do I need to do stuff like this, really? And so I never actually took it into my repertoire. But actually, yeah, it's now the preferred choice of engines. And what is the idea of it? Why would you play a6 and then bishop d7? Well, the idea actually is that black wants to play this move bishop b5. And the more, the thing about playing the bishop to b5 is that you're really fighting against this whole white plan of putting knights, for example, on c4 and d3, or c4 and b3. Because in actual fact, what Vishy realised all that time ago, and what the engines point out now in earnest, is that basically black should be happy to swap off this light squared bishop for a white knight, and then after that his problems are minimal. So let's have a look how it goes. So if you go knight to b3, this was what Goriachkina played against Hampi Koneru. Now Koneru played bishop d6, which the engines never want to play. They just want to play bishop b6, and after bishop d2 you just go knight c6. There's no chance anymore of a knight coming into c4 here, so you've got time. You can put the knight on c6. After rook c1, we can do several things here. Rook hc8 is pretty sensible. Bishop e1, bishop e8, knight c5, rook c7, knight d5, and you're just going to go rook ac8, and then you're just going to just try and move this knight away somehow and swap off rooks. And white's got a little bit of an initiative here, but it's barely anything at all. What you can also do is play the move knight e4, and after bishop e1 go rook c8. The engines want to take off like this, and then we go rook c7 as well, and then rook c8, bishop e8, we'll get our knight out of the way, and then eventually we'll just reach a draw like that, and probably play f6 to give our king a little bit of space as well. That is actually not very much at all for white there. So b3 has been the move of choice. Just well, I mean, you're hoping that this development is a little bit odd, and you do sort of think that if you get your bishop on b2, maybe the rook on c1, well, this bishop isn't going to be protected by a knight on d7. Might be a little bit awkward. But here Black plays bishop b5. And, well, this has been played by a lot of good players recently. There was a game, against Abdusatorov from Tata Steel 2023, where this happened as well. And after knight c4, well, Abdusatorov played knight bd7 against Wesley So. Knight d4, rook c8, and only then took on c4, but played like this, basically. And then bishop b4. The engines after knight c4, they want to take off immediately here. Takes rook c8, bishop b2, and knight bd7. And again, this Black's aim here is to play rook c7, rook c8, and then somehow get the bishop out of the way and maybe do something on the c file. This is very hard for White to really find something concrete against this. There was a game actually between Magnus Carlsen and Nisipianu, where Magnus managed to make something of it, but Black had the knight on c6, which was kind of awkward actually, and sort of interfered with all this c-file play. Putting the knight on d7, as so often in the Queen's Gambit accepted, is pretty good. And this is what we got for the engine games: rook c1, rook c7, bishop d3, rook c8, bishop b1. This is engine games here. b5, rook c2, g6, rook c1, knight d5, king f1, and then f5 here. And after g3, knight 7, f6, a3, bishop d6, and we just swap off the rooks there. And, the engines are agreeing a draw here. Now, if you were a human player, I think that, with the two bishops, you would, continue playing this, and you might claim a microscopic edge. Obviously, for the engines, this is not very much at all. But this really seems to be, an extremely safe way for Black to play. Just, all Black's problems come when White's two knights are into the Black position. Let's show you a good example there. A good example of those two knights being in a great position. Let's have a look. Must have one somewhere here. Knight c4. Oh, come on, Matthew. We can find a good one. Well, you know what I mean anyway. I've shown you enough of those positions. But, when knights are in d3 and b3, or d3, b3, and then c4, and then you're aiming at all these dark squares, and swapping off the light squared bishop very, very quickly for a knight on c4, for example, is a really great way of neutralizing the white attack, and then playing carefully with the knight on d7 to give you the ability to double on the c file and then move your pieces away. Yeah, it just seems to be a good, really good solid way for Black to play. And yeah, as I said, the slightly irritating thing for me is that I noticed this game in 1993. I even looked at it, but I just thought, oh, it's so funny. I don't really need anything like that, do I? I could play much more normally, and didn't realize the genius behind it. So there we are. I mean, that is kind of the current theoretical status at the moment. That in this line after d takes c5, Black is taking on c5, allowing the king to be displaced, and then against knight bd2, this very specific move, bishop d7, just looking to challenge these white knights from b5, swap one of them off, and therefore, remove half of the pressure on Black's weakish queenside dark squares there. That's the way that the Black players are doing this nowadays. And, the way that Humpikuneru drew so easily against Alexandra Goryachkina, it sort of shows that, I think that Black's got, a number of ways. Once Black's got that basic stuff in place there, then, I think that Black's got a little bit of leeway, really, for how to play it. But, not everyone knows that by any means. And, I think you've still got a chance to get a two bishops, a position where White's got the two bishops if you're playing this from the White side. So you can always claim a microscopic advantage at least. And, of course, if your opponents, your Black opponents, don't know how to play this, then, well, you know, look around, play around with your knights, choose something you know, interesting there, some interesting way of putting your knights, and you know, that can really cause some problems for black. And I think, you know, the typical ideas we saw in the previous video, you know, definitely worth investigating with white there. So there we are. Hope you enjoyed that. That was just a little bit of investigation on my part. I quite enjoyed it. You know, I love sort of looking at just one particular line and getting to know it in depth. You know, sort of getting inspiration both from you know, from lots of engine games, of course, but also from the things that human players have played. So yeah, very much enjoyed it. I hope it was enjoyable for you too. If you enjoyed it, why not give a like, subscribe to the channel, spread the word about this channel. It's would be lovely to get more subscribers, and otherwise take a look at my new book, new Chessable course, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, full of stuff like this. And otherwise, you know, thanks very much for watching, and hopefully see you for some next videos. Thanks for watching.